Hey guys, this is Danny Drawhands, and in today's video I wanted to do a demonstration of an urban sketching and talk a little bit about what I like about urban sketching. So what is urban sketching? Well, it's about taking a snapshot in time like a camera, but instead of a camera you're using your pen or pencil or whatever medium you're comfortable with to draw a quick sketch. So the first step of urban sketching is to select a good photograph. So what makes a good photograph for me is something that has a good balance of light and dark and has different kinds of geometrical shapes. There's also a good degree of depth in this photograph, so there are objects that are closer to you and then there are buildings or objects that are further away, which makes for a interesting drawing. So once you have a good photograph or a good scene selected, the second question that you will have in your head is where to start. And as you can see here, I have started from this bell tower in the center because that's supposed to be the center of focus or center of attention in this photograph, and everything sort of dances around that central figure. You want to draw your central figure or the central focus of your drawing as accurately as you can, and then as you draw other things that are on the side, the importance of drawing everything accurately is not quite the same. It's okay to make little changes to make your drawing a little bit more interesting, or if there's too much going on you could take out a couple of things. If you want to add a few more points of interest, you could do that. But if you draw the central figure of your drawing closer to the way that it appears in the photograph, it will let people know that what exactly it is that you're drawing, and they could look at it and immediately recognize the photograph or the place in the world where you chose to take that photograph from. So make sure that your central figure is as close to accurate as possible. But in urban sketching, it's supposed to be a quick sketch. Nothing is supposed to be perfect. The whole theme of this exercise is trying to capture this moment in time with the feeling that you feel at the moment of seeing it for the first time, and as long as that feeling is delivered, you did your job well. So something that I also typically do is do a very rough pencil sketch, and then I would use that to locate different things in the drawing, in the picture, so that I don't make major mistakes later on. But that is an added step which is entirely up to you. There is a certain amount of fun to be had when you're drawing directly onto the paper with pen and ink. It's a bit of a risk-taking exercise, but I think you have to be comfortable with it as you become a better artist. So a few things that are actually really important in urban sketching are scale and proportion, and then the depth of perspective. So things that are supposed to be further away need to appear as such, and things that are closer, you will draw them in a certain way. So what I'm doing over here is I'm just drawing an outline of this building right now, and then once I have that close to the way that it appears in the photograph, I can then later on go in and fill in some of these details. And all we're doing right now is just bringing the outlines of different parts of the sketch onto paper, and then whatever we do next, whether it's watercolor or markers or pen, that's entirely up to you. I will be just using pen and ink for this drawing, and I will be hatching to use for shading, but you can put your own spin on your style of sketching whichever way you want. So as you can see, I have sort of spent some time on this building and fill in some minor outlines, but I will be coming back to this later on when I'm finished with some of the same thing that I've done over here. When I've done that on this side, I'll come back and fill in some of the finer details, but you will see that as we move to the final step, I will make sure that I provide as much detail as possible on the central figure, and then everything that moves away from that, you'll get less and less focused. And that's kind of the key to urban sketching, of trying to identify where the eye is drawn, and then sort of dividing your attention between what you really want to put more focus on and what less so. And because it's kind of impossible to draw every little detail in every little nook and cranny of your drawing, especially when there's so much going on in the picture, like the one that we're working in today. So for this building right here, I want to sort of start with the top of the building, which is kind of this little roof structure over here. This is sort of attracting the eye because of the interesting shades going on over here, and then everything kind of grows out of that. So again, you just have to make sure that you have a general idea of their perspective. If you start to draw separate lines for each and every one of these windows, you know, that's a lot of time, and the entire idea is to just get the right feel. You don't necessarily have to get every detail correctly in a urban sketch like this one, but make sure that you don't go completely loose where you're not really paying attention to anything and it feels too loose, because you need to make sure that everything at the end of the day comes together. So do make sure to put just a little bit of attention on what is going on. You don't want any of the minor elements that you see over here or the little shops that I'm about to draw down here to take away too much from what you want the eye to be drawn to, because it's really when it comes to urban sketching, it's really about trying to manage the viewer's eye of what you want them to look at, and playing with how to draw attention at different points of your drawing. And when we get to the final stage, which is shading and adding more color if you want to, that's when you will see that take shape even more. So right now I'm using a 0.1 micron pen. You can also use a fountain pen, which I'll probably do in my next video. And if you like, you can even go a little bit thicker, but just use something that kind of matches the tone of the building, because there's a lot of detail going on in this drawing. That's why I use a finer tip. If it was more like a one building picture, I would probably use something that is a little bit thicker than this. Okay, so what I did over there is add just a little bit more detail to our drawing, and we're at we're about 30 minutes from when I started this drawing in real time. And if you were to sit down and measure everything and draw everything to perfection, man, you're gonna be a couple of hours in for sure, if you want everything to be accurately drawn. But then that takes away from the entire concept of urban sketching, especially the word sketching. It means about doing it quickly. It's about putting your ideas out there. It's not about hyper-realism, something that I am not necessarily keen on. It's about just finding your flow, finding the fun in sketching, not to make it sound like not to make it feel like a task. Okay, so there are a couple of ways in which you can go from here to finish this picture. You could shade everything and color everything with watercolor, which is a fantastic option. You can use architectural sketching markers, Copic markers, Yoo-hoo markers. There are a couple other brands that have good grayscale and markers that kind of look like watercolor, and I have used them quite a bit as well. You could go with color pencil. Today I'm just going with a simple pen shade, so I'm going to be hatching, because I don't want to complicate this process at this point. I just wanted to introduce you guys to urban sketching and just kind of give you the breakdown of what I do personally. And maybe I'll do a drawing in the future where I do some watercolor. So when I'm starting to shade, I always start with some of the darkest areas, and I start to do like this. And there are various ways in which you can hatch. I have an entire video about how to hatch with a pen. Make sure to watch that. The link for that is in the description below. I break down my entire process of how I shade. And what we did over here for this little portion is exactly what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the drawing. When we're done, you're going to feel like there's some life in this photograph, which is lacking right now, and that depends entirely on your own personal style of how you do that, and I think that's where your own skill and experience shines the most. And I encourage you to experiment with different ways of shading and bringing life to your picture, whether it's urban sketching or still life or whatever kind of drawing you like to do. Okay, so now that I'm kind of done with this part of the sketch, I'm gonna move on to over here, and I'm going to try to make it a little bit darker because this is gonna be in the foreground, and since our light's kind of coming in somewhere around here, that's why this part of this town square is kind of lit up. So this part of the sketch is naturally going to be a lot darker. Also, it kind of creates this sense of depth where this is really close to you and everything else is in the back. Also, as you may have seen, there's very little focus as you move away from the center. That's kind of what's going to be going on over here as well. So guys, when it comes to urban sketching, you will have to kind of find your own style eventually of the way in which you want to draw this. My style, as you may see, is a little bit messy. It's not what you would say a clean sketch. I like a little bit of fluidity. It's not clean cut lines, clean cut shading. There's a little bit of overlapping, a lot of kind of overwork here, but that's just my style. I like to show depth and a certain variation in light and dark. For that, I have to do multiple layers of blackening to make it more interesting to me, but you don't necessarily have to follow this exact style when it comes to urban sketching. Do it in your own way. Start with a very basic sketch. Do light shading, maybe use watercolor, color pencil, whichever suits you best. But for a pen only sketch, this is kind of the pattern that I usually follow. It's perfectly fine for me that it looks a little bit messy, a little bit rough around the edges. That's just how I feel comfortable drawing. So make sure that you draw in a style that is your own, and don't go out of your way to try to draw like someone else, because at the end of the day, the whole concept is to have fun doing this. I'm gonna do some broad strokes over here to kind of just let people know, like, don't pay too much attention to what's going on over here. This is kind of a building here on the side. It's filler, really. The focus is more towards the center, more towards the town square, the bell tower, and this is more like a more added detail on the side. So as we're nearing the end of our sketch, I'd like to say that you can always spend more time on this, make it more refined, make it more appealing, use different techniques, whether that's adding watercolor, adding markers, pencils, whichever way you like to make this feel a little bit more lifelike, you can do that. This whole drawing took about 45 minutes in real time. Of course, you're seeing a sped up version of it at times, but that's about how long it took me to draw this whole thing. It should not take you longer than that, especially if you're live drawing a building while doing sort of like a CD walk or something like that, and you see a scene that you really like. It should not take you more than like 20-30 minutes max. So make sure that you focus on reducing your overall time in urban sketching, and just try to capture the feeling of what you see and stop chasing perfection. It's about fluidity and scale, depth of view, what's closer, what's away, what part of the drawing do you want the viewer to be more focused on. Focus on that, and then everything around kind of just supports that information. So those are the key things that you need to worry about when urban sketching. So don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching. This is Danny Drawhands. I will see you in the next one. Cheers.